First, Barry Norman makes his personal choice from the many notable cinema releases of 1992, Films of the Year.
Hello and welcome to It'll Be Alright in the 90s, which is, as far as we know, the first Wessex-based nostalgia podcast to be renewed for a second series. I'm Alex, and joining me is my regular co-host, Stu. Stu, they've renewed our contract. Can you believe it?
Hi, Greenie. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Should have killed us last year. I can't believe it. It's great to be back on the airwaves with you, mate. I've been really, in heavy training over the Christmas period. Went and did some warm weather nostalgia training, got away from it all, and I'm back limbering up, raring to go for another series. Yeah, absolutely. How have you been?
I've been okay. I've spent most of my time off just putting together underappreciated social media posts for the podcast.
We do try. This is all part of the drive for more listeners that we were talking about in the Millennium episode, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's not unappreciated by me. I can say that. I can say that much. I know I'm not that good on that side of things, so I appreciate everything you put into it, mate. I really do.
Oh, no worries. But what is this podcast if not us two just trying to amuse each other on a nostalgia theme, whether that's social media or the podcast itself? So I'm glad you liked them. We will, of course, be talking about the films of 1992 later on. But we'll get to that in a bit. Before we go any further, I should say that today's episode is sponsored by Alba Audio Equipment. So head down to your local branch of Richer Sounds, Radio Shack or Argos and quote the code ALLRIGHT90s to get 10% off their brand new range of portable cassette players. And that includes their brand new CP705 model. So we'll go and check that out. I'm sure they'll let you have a go if you go in and ask nicely. But thanks to that offer code, you can bring your favourite music wherever you go at a fantastic price, and that is thanks to our sponsors today, Alba. So thanks to those guys.
Thanks so much to the guys at Alba. Very fond memories of my gold Alba CD personal CD player, which was very well loved and very well used until my dad smashed it on our driveway one day, and then it died. I think we might have mentioned that before, but yeah, very very good memories of my Alba products. So thanks to those guys for that. Superb.
We've been away for a while, so the mailbag will be fuller than usual. Obviously, there's still a bit of a backlog with the Royal Mail and the mail strikes, I should say. But there's a few things in here, so we're going to get down to them now. Do you want to start with what you've got there, Stu?
Just a couple of notes regarding things from recent episodes. So first of all, regular correspondent Tom Page gets in touch regarding the Reebok Step. Green, you might remember that I referred to the fact when we were talking about the Reebok workout in our Millennium episode that we have a Reebok Step in our rehearsal room, which is also used as a gym, bizarrely. But Tom gets in touch to confirm that, yes, there is a Reebok Step in use in the fire station gym. It's used as part of the Chester Step Test, which makes up part of their annual fitness test as well. So it's like a bleep test, but with stepping, presumably for getting up flights of stairs, etc., etc. So good to know that the Reebok Step is still forming a vital, crucial part of the fitness tests of our key workers. Really, really good to hear that.
Yeah, I've got a wonderful image of firefighters bursting into an office block or some building that's on fire, reaching the stairs, and then they all just go up to the first step and then step back down again because they've been so programmed into doing that they never get up the stairs. Hopefully not.
Tom, can you write back in and let us know if that's ever happened? We'd love to know.
Okay, over at my end, we have been contacted by friend of the pod, Hannah Kelly. She's got a couple of things here. The first one refers to our most recent episode, the Millennium Eve episode, or the Turn of the Millennium episode. And she says that when she was celebrating that New Year's Eve, she went to a family party and my older cousin's friend was there, and I slow danced with him, feeling incredibly grown up at the age of 15, which I'm only really reading out because when I read it, I thought it said my cousin. I slow dance with my cousin, which I thought was quite a funny idea and funny thing to send in.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it's certainly how I'm going to remember it anyway, whether it's true or not.
Rewriting history again, and it'll be all right in the 90s.
And then also in relation to the game show episode, back a few episodes back now, she said that she really enjoyed the episode, and one of the shows that takes her back to Friday and Saturday nights of her youth at home was watching a Saturday night run of Baywatch, Gladiators, Casualty, and Blind Date, and we'd always have a Chinese takeaway and watch it all.
Oh,
That is an all-star Galactica of Saturday night entertainment shows. Is that really?
that is a great run. No, I mean, ITV in the early to mid 90s was on point for that. You know?
Yeah. So Baywatch, was that on ITV or something else? Baywatch.
I think so.
So that would have been ITV, then a quick pop over to BBC for the Casualty, and then back to ITV for Blind Date with Scylla. That is fantastic. She also says, does Gladiators count as a game show? I say it definitely does, doesn't it?
I would say so, yeah.
She says, if so, as a youth, I went to Birmingham and watched it live. Such a highlight from my teen years, and I came home with a foam finger.
Oh, that's amazing.
What a way
as
to
in like
an
episode record or a Gladiators live experience, because I know they do.
Oh yeah,
they do these
true.
sorts of things these days, don't they? Like Strictly Come Dancing, do like live tours and stuff. So
yeah, I wonder.
I would imagine the success of Gladiators at that point would have been such that that it would have been able to take a tour on the road.
Yeah. Oh, I would have said so. Yeah, definitely by then. She doesn't say whether she went with her cousin or not, but we don't know. Back over to you, Stu. What have you got there?
Yes, I think an apology is in order. Another regular correspondent, George Alty, has been commenting on some of our previous episodes on YouTube, and we've failed to notice that the comments are actually there. It's not an area that we check that often for correspondence, so I do apologise, but to George. But we have a couple of his comments here on some of our previous episodes. So way back for our Forgotten TV episode 9, when we were discussing Strange But True, George actually says, I've used the Stocksbridge bypass. And if you remember, that's where our Strange But True clip was based. I think there was a ring of ghostly young ladies singing Ring a Ring of Roses, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and a monk that kept appearing on the overpass, I think.
Yes, indeed. So he says, I've used the Stocksbridge bypass. Blimey, I'll get my teeth in a minute. He says, strange but true. I realise now, as my journey on this earth is approaching the final stretch of congested highway, that I've missed a trick. To guarantee a shot at the afterlife, I should have been a monk. Whoever reports a project manager roaming with a barely completed risk register in his hand, requesting a lessons learned. Quite right, George.
It's true. You don't see many ghostly project managers around, but
Indeed. And then he goes on to comment on the Dream Garage episode, which is far more recent. He says, I had a lone demo Subaru Justy when my Fiat Uno popped its clutch the week I bought it from Wildman's in Urchfont. I took it to work, he says that was RAF Lynham at the time, where we had a thing going on with the service metro. 4 times on the gravel around the radio receivers building. The all-wheel drive Justy slaughtered the metro. 4 of us tagged the arse off it, then I washed it and took it back and picked up the Uno. Sorry, Wildmans.
I don't think you are sorry, George.
I don't think
you regretted any of that.
But it's nice that through the podcast you've been able to get that out in the open and finally admit that. Get it off your chest, so to speak. He also says, I think he requested an Alfa Romeo as part of his Dream Garage, didn't he? When he wrote in, we did read that out. He says, I wanted one of those, but the waiting list was 9 months, so I got a Toyota Avensis CDX instead, which is a step down, let's be honest.
Yeah, you couldn't even say that was the Japanese Alpha, because it's not, is it? It's not even that.
I think legend of the pod, Big Tim Parker drives a Toyota Avensis, so we better be careful about what we say.
He does, yeah, in a lovely champagne colour, if I remember.
It really is, yeah. The same colour as my Alba CD player. Exactly the same, come to think of it.
Yeah. What's the most 90s colour? Actually, this doesn't make sense because his Toyota's not 90s, sadly.
No, that's true. That is true.
When that Avensis does finally bite the dust, I'm going to convince him to buy an old Montega or something, just in honour of the pod.
Well, I remember fondly his older Rover 2.1 something. I can't remember which.
It was a 4.1. Was it? Yeah, I think it was a 4.16.
A 4.16.
Because he had the saloon version. And our friend Chris Mennel also had a Rover 400. And my family car at the time was a Rover 200. It was very much the era of the Rover K series engine back then. But yeah, there you go.
Brilliant. Have you got anything else in the mailbag at your end?
Yeah, finally, this was on Twitter from a friend of the pod, Request the 90s. A great Twitter account, by the way, should check them out.
Absolutely.
And they said, I just listened to your pod about Argos catalogues, and I'm one of the people to own a Master System 2 in the mid-90s, because, of course, we questioned when we were looking through the gaming section of the catalogue, it had like 2 different eras in there, and they were still selling Master Systems in there. And so Request the 90s says they still had one in the 90s. It had the 8-bit version of Sonic the Hedgehog built in, and one of my favourite games for it was a Tetris rip-off called Columns. I've never heard of Columns.
I remember Columns very well. It was part of the a thing called Mega Games 1, which I had on the Mega Drive, the 16-bit. And you got Italia 90, the top-down football game.
Yeah.
Columns, and I think it was Super Hang-On, maybe, which was a motorcycle game. But yeah, I remember Columns very fondly. A bit of a Tetris rip-off, if I'm honest. I think somebody might have commented that underneath Request the 90s original post.
Yeah, I think
Did
that
someone
was
say that.
Yeah, that was What's the Story 90s Glory commented on that. I think they backed it up. So
well, I fully agree with that. But it had some very soothing music, as I recall. So I think I liked the music more than I did the game. But yeah, no, Columns very very well remembered in the Joslin household for sure.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate all of your correspondence.
I've got one more. More before we move on.
Apologies.
No, it's okay. It's just a very short one. Again, regular correspondent Alex Mitchell writing in about 90s fitness workout tapes.
He's not done one, has he?
No. That's a great idea. Yeah, Alex, let's get on it. Let's that's patent pending that now, or whatever we say, copyright control, and yeah, we'll do it will be all right in the 90s fitness tape. But he says his mum's favorite fitness videotape of the 90s was Beverley Callard's Real Results. Beverley Callard, of course, famous for playing Liz McDonald in Coronation Street at the time, wife of my favorite ever Coronation Street character, Jim McDonald. Not that I was ever an avid Coronation Street viewer, but Jim McDonald is up there. We should maybe do soap operas in the 90s, actually, and just take it from a completely, oblique angle.
Yeah, we should, yeah.
Yeah, because I can't imagine that you've ever watched them much or watched them much in the...
There was a period of my life where, as a family, we watched EastEnders quite avidly. It was around the Tiffany, Phil and Grant era.
Okay.
But then, not since then. But yeah,
well, my mum watched them all, pretty much still does watch them all. And I remember very big things happening, but taking them in via osmosis just because I was in the room at the time doing something else.
Yeah.
So yeah, I reckon that there's definitely an episode in that. But I think my mum or one of my aunts might have had Beverley Callard's Real Results as well, because I remember her hanging around. She's an awful sort of light blue leotard on the cover with amazing mid-90s hair. It's brilliant. We'll put it up. We'll put up a picture on Instagram when we release the episode so that everyone can enjoy it. But no, thanks Alex for that. And as I cut across Alex when he was saying this, thanks to you all for your great correspondence. We really do appreciate it and enjoy reading out. So keep it coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. All right, I'm just going to look up Beverley Callard. I wanted to see if it was available on eBay.
Oh yeah, okay.
The first autocomplete for Beverley Callard on Google is Beverley Callard boat. She got something with a boat going on.
Maybe she lives on a boat. I don't know.
Yeah, it might.
Don't edit a minute of this, by the way. Keep this all. This is gold.
It's Beverley Callard boat, Beverley Callard daughter, or down there Beverley Callard fitness. So she is still remembered for it. Here we go. Beverley Callard fitness. Oh yeah, Real Results. Beverley Callard.
There you go.
New 2003 DVD Region 2, $7.99, all best offer. So.
Low baller, mate. Offer him a $5. See what happens.
Well, all the ones underneath are £1 with no bid, so I think $7.99 is optimistic. From Second Sounds 897 there. 100% feedback though.
Oh, that's all right then. Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah.
I've just opened up my eBay. I don't know if you can see that. That's the Diamond Villa goalkeeper shirt there.
How much is it?
That's new old stock, but it's only in boys size, and it's £125. But it is brand new, so Yeah,
Oh,
well,
boy size. I wonder how big that is. You might have to just put it up on your wall.
maybe, yeah, frame it, something like that.
Yeah. Hang on. Beverly Ballard's had a 2010 release as well. Like
Who's
it was a
Beverly
sequel.
Ballard?
Beverly Collard.
Who's Beverly Collard?
Beverly Callard.
Callard.
Yeah. Beverly Callard's Body Blaster. Came out in 2010.
Beverly Ballard's what?
Beverly's Bollards. Right, this is completely off topic now. She had another one in 2004, Lasting Results with Beverly Callard.
So
she's got a whole series here.
But this must mean then that all the other ones are not worth the paper they're printed on, so to speak. Then if she's having to keep bringing out more,
possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a VHS version of that first one for $6.99 or best offer. Oh. No one's going to spend £7 on a VHS of a Beverly Callard. I'm really struggling with the alliteration here. Right, let's move on. This is silly.
I'm going to buy that and have it sent to your house. Time for What's the Most 90s. I hope everybody out there got some nice toys to play with over the Christmas period. What I want to ask Alex this time round is what he thinks the most 90s collectible toy is or was.
Well, this answer came to me pretty quickly. I didn't really think of anything other than this, and I've gone straight for the Tazo, if we're going to include that as a toy. And they were obviously given away free with packets of Walker's crisps in this country, at least. It was a global thing, because I looked it up on Wikipedia. And it was a global thing, and it was connected to the Lay's, what's the American version of it? Something Lay's something brand. So they whatever that brand is in your particular country would have done Tazos. And I remember the first ones were Looney Tunes. And then that was like mid-90s, and then later on they did Star Wars ones. But I think they did whole other, like loads of different lines over the years. But I distinctly remember the Looney Tunes ones and everyone going crazy for them at primary school. And yeah, just made eating crisps even more exciting. Back in the day when you'd get something in a packet of crisps, which doesn't happen anymore. Same with cereal. One of the great sort of sadly missed elements of the 90s for me. But yeah, it was just, they were everywhere, and swapping them in the playground, seeing what you were going to get. It's the same sort of dopamine hit as football stickers, obviously. And yeah, I think they were great. And I looked it up on eBay, going back to eBay again. You can buy a batch of them for about between £5 and £10 on eBay now. This is the Looney Tunes ones. Although I did see that someone was asking for £100 for a complete set in a binder. Possibly the same guy that was trying to sell that Beverly Callard fitness video.
Well done.
Yeah, that was my choice anyway, Tazos. What about you?
Brilliant. Well, I'm not sure you're going to believe this, but you can see my notes here. I've got collectible toys and I've got Tazos written down. There you go.
Yes.
Yeah. So I went for Tazos as well. I had the bright red Walkers folder with my Looney Tunes Tazo collection in there. I'm not sure where it is now. It's probably been been removed long since from the depths of my parents' garage. But I was actually unaware that I remember the Looney Tunes and the Star Wars, but I was unaware until I looked into it a bit further that there were even more series than that. There was a Simpsons series, which I would have thought I would have been aware of, but I never was. But yeah, I loved a Tazo. I remember I was in about year 4 at primary school. It must have been when the because the Star Wars ones would have been to coincide with the re-release, the 20th anniversary release of the one of the original movies. So 97. And I was on the lookout for a Lando Calrissian Tazo, and nobody had one. And I went to the toilet at lunchtime. I was washing my hands, and I'm not making this up. This is as true as I'm sitting here. There was a Lando Calrissian Tazo inside the soap dispenser.
Wow.
On the sink, above the sink.
Yeah.
So of course I had the top off. I was in there. I managed to cover my tracks pretty well because nobody said anything. But yeah, and I had a very, very clean example of a Lando Calrissian Tazo. So yeah, I had a very, it was close run thing between the Tazos and the sort of Merlin Premier League stickers. It wasn't Panini at that time. It was Merlin, of course.
True, yeah.
Which I was very heavily into around the same time. We've spoken about the Panini album, haven't we? The PFA album, I think, on here before, haven't we? That was another album I had.
No, I don't, maybe we have.
Okay, so
Was that just a later iteration of the Merlin one?
No, so it was the same season. So I think it was 96, 97 season. So you had the Merlin one, which was the official one.
Oh, okay.
And then the Panini brought one out with the PFA. And it was all the same players, but they were all in just, it was a plain white tracksuit top with the PFA logo on it.
Okay.
And there were 2 players on a page, and they were all done alphabetically by surname.
Right.
So yeah, so it wasn't all in team order, but that was quite a bizarre collection as well. Never completed it, but yeah, in the end, the Tazos had to win out, and I'm glad again that the pod hive mind has sprung into action, and we've come to the same conclusion, because that must mean that we were destined to host this together, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is this the second time after Viennetta where we've come together with the same answer. There might have been one or two other things.
I think it's happened a few times, yeah, but Viennetta is the only one that springs to mind. So yeah, but it has happened a few times. So that's an easy one for Jeff to put in the ledger if he's back from his Christmas holiday, that is.
I think he's still over there in Torremolinos, but but I'll make a note for him when he comes back anyway.
All right, well, he better come back soon, because there's stuff building up here. I mean, we've had YouTube comments that we haven't read out for like 9 months. This is why the lawyer keeps going on holiday.
Time to move on now to the main bulk of the episode, which is, of course, the films of 1992. So this follows on from the previous 2 episodes we've done in this sort of stream of the films of the decade, which we're taking episode by episode. We've obviously done 1990 and 1991, which are both massive years. Loads of things in there that I remember from my childhood, but we'll see how 1992 goes. Stu, shall we do what we normally do? We'll go with the box office and the award winners, and then we'll choose our 3 personal choices each and see how we get on.
Certainly. Okay, so here's your top 10 highest grossers for 1992. Number 10 is Wayne's World. And number 9 is Bram Stoker's Dracula. And number 8 is Sister Act. Number 7, A Few Good Men. Number 6, Batman Returns. Number 5, Lethal Weapon 3. Number 4, Basic Instinct. Number 3, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Number 2 is The Bodyguard. And at number 1, by almost $100 million, is Aladdin.
Big Disney release, wasn't it?
Very much so. Very much so.
Okay, that is not a bad top 10 at all. These were the award winners for the year. So at the BAFTAs, the best film went to Howard's End. The best director was Robert Altman for The Player. Best actor was Robert Downey Jr. for Chaplin. And the best actress was Emma Thompson for Howard's End. And then at the Academy Awards, the Oscars, the best film was Unforgiven. The best director was Clint Eastwood for Unforgiven. The best actor was Al Pacino for Scent of a Woman, and the best actress again was Emma Thompson for Howard's End, doing it for the Brits, which we like to see. So yeah, the BAFTAs and the Academy Awards did differ quite a lot there, but all some big names. And then of course we can't ignore the Golden Raspberries, which is of course the awards for the biggest duff.
But we are ignoring the Golden Globes, correct?
Of course, yeah.
Of course, yeah. Right, okay.
So the Golden Raspberries, the worst film was awarded to Shining Through, which starred Michael Douglas and Melanie Griffith. I've never heard of that film.
Me neither.
Probably for good reason. And then for the best / worst actress award also went to Melanie Griffith for both Shining Through and A Stranger Among Us. So she won it for 2 different appearances, which is not a great year for Melanie Griffiths. And then the worst actor went to Sylvester Stallone for Stop or My Mum Will Shoot. So well done, Sylvester, for winning that one. I've never seen Stop or My Mum Will Shoot. Have you?
No, but I want to watch it. It sounds like a sort of, family comedy, Jingle All the Way, kindergarten cop type vehicle. So no, I'm keen on that. I'm keen on that.
Yeah, maybe we should both endeavour to both watch it and then have a little discussion about it on whatever episode we do next.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I've ever said this before, but I always find it a bit strange that there always appears to be very little correlation between the top 10 highest grossing movies and the award winners. And very, very rarely will somebody pick up an award for the top film at the box office. Like nobody's winning anything for Aladdin or The Bodyguard.
Yeah, that is very
in
true.
terms of acting, So I just always find that a little strange, but there we go. That's just me.
I suppose it's that divide between the fans and the critics, isn't it? And you see it in music and films and everything. But I did notice actually that A Whole New World from Aladdin did win the Oscar for Best Original Song. So
well, there we go.
They won something. I can only hear Jordan and Peter Andre singing that song now. I can't even hear the original.
Well, it's the definitive version. I mean, there can't be any argument about that.
Yeah,
there can't be.
Right, so we've done the lists and the countdowns. Shall we talk about what our favourite films were from the year then, Stu? Let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm going to go serious first of all. I want to talk about a film called Glengarry Glen Ross. This was released on the 2nd of October 1992 and directed by James Foley. Straight off the bat, I want to say that this is a fantastic year for me film-wise. I've managed. There's 3 of my all-time favourite films were released in this year, and it's going to be a pleasure to talk about them for the next little while. I don't think I've had a year as strong as this so far, and it remains to be seen if I have a year as strong as this in the preceding 7 episodes that we're going to do on the movies of the 90s. But I'd like to see this one get challenged. I'm not sure it will. Anyway, Glengarry Glen Ross. So this is my favourite serious movie. I first watched this movie after hearing a friend of the pod, Jon Amor, speaking about it. I was speaking about him with it in a pub at one of his gigs. I think it came up, or he was talking to somebody else about it, and I sort of made a mental note because I just wanted to be cool like Jon Amor, and I wanted to like the things that he liked. So I watched Glengarry Glen Ross, got hold of a copy, and I'm very glad I did. Have you ever seen it?
I have. I saw it for the first time relatively recently. Yeah.
Okay, Ryan. What did you think?
Yeah, I really liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know, it's an office of real estate salesmen in New York City, and they're given the news in a storming sort of cameo appearance by Alec Baldwin, who plays one of the top brass in the organisation. That all but the top 2 salesmen are going to be fired at the end of the week. And then there's Shelley Levine, who's played by Jack Lemmon. He has a sick daughter, and he's trying to get the better leads from his boss so that he can be one of the top salesmen. It doesn't really work out, and then a plan gets hatched to steal the leads, etc., etc. A really, really great movie. I enjoyed it so much that I even went to see it in the theatre. It was on at the Theatre Royal in Bath a few years back with Nigel Harman, who's most famous in the UK for playing Alex.
I can't put a face to the name, so am I allowed to Google his face?
Yeah, no, please do. Yeah. Harman.
Oh,
Don't go mixing up the vowels like you did with Beverley Bollard.
Oh, I recognise him, but I cannot think what he's most famous for. Tell me.
Well, we're going back to soap operas again. He was Dirty Den's son, Dennis, in EastEnders for a little while there. So he was in Glengarry Glen Ross along with Mark Benton, another famous UK actor. So really good production. I really enjoyed that as well. So this has won critical acclaim in its time, and it's now considered one of the best movies in the 90s, but it was a box office failure at the time, which is really strange to think of now, considering it is considered a cult classic. Jack Lemmon, Al Pacino as well is amazing as Ricky Roma. As I say, Alec Baldwin, the always be closing scene at the start.
A, B, C. A, always, B, B, C, closing. Always be closing. Always be closing. AIDA. Attention, interest, decision, action. Attention. Do I have your attention? Interest. Are you interested? I know you are, because it's fuck or walk. You close or you hit the bricks. Decision. Have you made your decision for Christ? And action.
I just love it. It's so atmospheric. Watch it every few years. And it's one of the few real serious dramas that I will go back to. And I just love it. So yeah, Glengarry Glen Ross.
Very nice. Yeah, it's an acting masterclass from what I remember, because it is based on the play, isn't it? So those sort of films, there's certain films like that where you can see that it was a play because of the way they've set it out and the staging of it. But it doesn't suffer for that, from what I remember. It's just because the performances are so good and it is atmospheric. Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well when I saw it.
Oh, great. Glad to hear it. Well, I did actually get in touch with John and ask him to provide his thoughts on Glengarry Glen Ross and why it's one of his favourite movies of all time. So when that arrives with me, I'll read it out on the next episode and we'll get John's take on it.
Spot on, yeah. I thought you were going to say you got hold of Al Pacino for a second.
He's here tonight.
Jon Amor is much cooler anyway, so. Right, my first choice is White Men Can't Jump, which was written and directed by Ron Shelton, starring my favourite actor of all time, Woody Harrelson, and also Wesley Snipes and Rosie Perez are the two main actors in it. So this is a film set around basketball, so you could consider it a sport film, I suppose. It's set in 1990s LA, which is probably my favourite, or definitely one of my favourite settings for films is 90s LA. I mean, so many films are set in that era, like, you know, Boys in the Hood, Heat, Falling Down, 187, just so many great films with this sprawling sort of orange tinted cityscape in the background, and I really love that whole vibe. This is a great example of it. And the film follows those two guys, so Woody Harrelson's character and Wesley Snipes' character, who are basically they join forces and become a duo of basketball kind of hustlers. So they make their money by pretending not to know each other, and then they get challenged to play 2-on-2 basketball, and they play for money. And there's some mobsters involved, and there's lots of cameos from 90s and 80s basketball players that I don't recognize, but I'm sure our American listeners will know them better than us. And I just think it's a good, solid comedy drama. The story's fun. The characters are engaging. Like I said, it's got Woody Harrelson in it, my favorite actor. It's got a good combination, a good balance of humor and tension. And I watched it. I must have watched it when I was in my early mid-teens with my brother, and I watched it again recently when we were preparing for this episode, just to remind myself. And yeah, it still stands up. It still looks great, and all those other positives about it still stand. And actually, I have been to one of the areas where it was filmed in purely by chance. I think this is the only time I've ever accidentally walked onto a film location, which was when I was visiting LA a few years ago. We were walking through Watts. We just visited the Watts Towers, and my friend Ian, who I was with at the time, pointed out that this iron bridge that goes over the subway tracks and said that looks familiar. And then we looked to the right, and there was a basketball court there, and he put, we connected the dots and recognized it from White Men Can't Jump. So I like it for that as well. It's got that slight personal connection. And that was the first film that jumped out at me on the list of 1992 films. But yeah, actually, because I know you started off by saying what your general feel for the list was, I'm sort of the opposite of you. In fact, in that the films from 1992 there didn't seem to be so many big ones for me in there than the previous 2 years that we've done. For me, I was struggling to find ones that I really loved, but I've got 3 here, so there are some.
Scrape some together.
Yeah, exactly. But this was my first choice anyway. White Men Can't Jump.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, it's funny really that I haven't seen this, because I love Woody Harrelson, I love basketball, but I've never actually seen White Men Can't Jump. I think I've seen I caught the first 20 minutes or so on TV once, and I didn't sort of go ahead with the rest of it. But it is, it's a shame I haven't seen it. It's one I'm definitely going to have to put on the list.
Well, yeah, it's currently on Disney Plus. If anyone has that, that's where I watched it this time. So if anyone has listened to this shortly after it's been released, the episode, then that's where you can find it. But I definitely recommend it. It's good, solid, early 90s film fun.
Brilliant. I've got Disney Plus. I can do that.
Nice. Right, let's go on to your second choice.
Absolutely. Well, it was this film's 30th birthday. Well, as is the case with all of these films. But it was this film's 30th birthday on December the 11th last year. Directed by Brian Henson. I'm talking about the greatest Christmas film of all time. It's The Muppet Christmas Carol. There can be no question in my mind. I love the Muppets. I love Michael Caine. Italian Job, Escape to Victory, Muppet Christmas Carol. There's
What
a
a
triumvirate. What a trilogy, if ever there was one. So this is always a Christmas winner for me. Again, I had the pleasure of seeing this actually with a live orchestra in Bath just before Christmas this year, which was an amazing experience. I found myself actually watching the movie and forgetting that the orchestra were there. And I was trying to divide my time between watching how the orchestra were playing and watching the movie. But in the end, I just got totally taken in with the movie like I always do. I own the soundtrack on vinyl as well. It's one of the few movie soundtracks that I own. So a great soundtrack as well. And there are so many classic and quotable parts. The end scene where Ebenezer Scrooge invites himself round to Bob Cratchit's house and brings the entire town along with him as well for Christmas dinner. Never fails to make me smile. I think it's possibly one of the best retellings of the Christmas Carol story. Certainly for an audience of my age, I suppose it's always going to be an iconic thing for for those of us in our sort of mid-30s. And it's as I say, it's number one on the list every Christmas, and it will be until the end of time for me. So yeah, The Muppet Christmas Carol is my second movie of '92, and pleased to be able to celebrate its 30th birthday with that live orchestra performance at the end of last year.
Excellent. It is, I think, quite a feat to have been able to make a film with the Muppets about a Dickens story like that and make it so successful and so iconic.
Mm-hmm.
And it probably is loads of people's favourite Christmas film. And arguably is the definitive version of A Christmas Carol. Which is
well, obviously there'll be different arguments for different versions. I know my dad likes the version. My dad likes the version with Patrick Stewart, which he always seeks out every year. So there are many different versions. But it's difficult to argue against The Muppet Christmas Carol being one of the most iconic. I think. Have you seen this?
I have, but not for years.
Right, okay,
definitely due a rewatch. Christmas for me is always sort of early December. I'm thinking, it's too early to watch Christmas films. I don't want to watch one yet. I'm also usually trying to catch up on films from the previous year or the year up to that point. So I don't really get into it that early, and then it gets to like December the 20th, and I haven't watched any, and I'm suddenly trying to watch them all. But by that point, it's too late. So I end up watching about one Christmas film a year. But I need to make sure I watch this next year because it's long overdue a rewatch.
Oh, please do. You will love it. You will love it. It's one of Michael Caine's finest performances, if you ask me.
It's between that and Jaws 4. So my second choice is the historical epic The Last of the Mohicans, which was directed by Michael Mann and released in November in the UK, November 92. This is, like I said, it's historical epic set in the 1750s during the French and Indian War, and it's based on a novel from the 19th century, starring Daniel Day-Lewis when he was big by this point, but not quite as sort of well respected as he is now, but still a big name. And he's well known for being a method actor and going like whole hog in his characters and his roles. So apparently in preparation for this, he lived in the wilderness for a few weeks, hunting and fishing off the land for several months prior to shooting, which is so Daniel Day-Lewis. Apparently by the end of the shoot, he was treated for claustrophobia and mild hallucinations because he'd really gone method on it. I'm not going to go into the details of what the story is, but it's essentially it follows him as he's trying to escort these women to safety across this dangerous area of America during this war, and they're being pursued by this band of baddies, for want of a better word. And the main villain is played by Wes Studi, who is a prolific Native American actor. He's in loads of things, any sort of Western. There's like two or three really big Native American actors. There's him, Graham Greene, and then maybe one or two others. But Wes Studi is a real legend of Hollywood. But his character in this really terrified me as a child. There's something about him. He looks intimidating, and he has this sort of cold, heartless fury. And he also uses an axe as a weapon, which is, I think, one of the scariest weapons, most intimidating weapons that a baddie can have. And I think that was the main thing that stuck with me when I first watched this, as probably would have been in the late 90s when I was I don't know, 10 or 11, maybe.
Mhm.
Tiny bit older, but his character's the one that haunted my dreams for a long time, which I guess is testament to how good Wes Studdy's performance is in this film. And it's what, Stu, this is what I want from a film. This is what I want from a historical epic, I should say. I want overwrought soundtracks. I want slow-mos. And I want big set pieces with people sacrificing their lives for other people. Ideally jumping through a waterfall in slow motion in order to do it. And it has all those things. It's got a big emotional score by Trevor Jones. It's also got I Will Find You by Clannad. And any film with a Clannad song on the soundtrack, is going to be a bit of a tearjerker.
Well, unless it's the cover of Fairy Tale of New York.
Oh, God.
That would be a tearjerker for other reasons.
Yeah, it's not that. So, yeah, all those things added up. It was just a big film when I was growing up. Yeah, that's my second choice.
It's no Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Well, no. Of course it isn't.
I always remember getting this film conflated in my young mind with Raiders of the Lost Ark for some reason. I don't know why I would get those two mixed up, but I always did.
Well, so you've not seen it then, have you?
I haven't. No. But I think they might have been next to each other on my parents' VHS shelf.
Yeah,
and that might have been something that contributed to it.
Well, out of those two, you've got to go for Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's hands down. I mean, there's no debate about that. Unfortunately, we won't be talking about the Indiana Jones films because I think they're all 80s. They
yes, are. Yeah. I think Last Crusade was 89, I think, or yeah. So unfortunately, and we can't talk about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Not that we would want to anyway, because that's far too far into the future.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, this will remain an Indiana-free zone, which means that I will never be able to do my impression of Sean Connery playing Indiana Jones's dad on the podcast, and that's a real shame.
That is a real shame.
Yeah, it was just going to have to remain under wraps.
Oh well, let's go on to your third choice.
My third choice was released on February the 14th, 1992, directed by Penelope Spheris, all the way from Aurora, Illinois. It's Wayne's World. So this, of course, is a spin-off of Saturday Night Live sketch. And the film concerns Wayne and Garth getting their public access show on to commercial television. I mean, this movie is just so eminently quotable. We're not worthy, Schwing, she will be mine. Oh, yes, she will be mine, etc., etc. It's a sort of film that you don't learn anything from. It's very daft, silly comedy, but I think there's obviously a place for that sort of thing. There always will be. There's the iconic scene with Wayne and Garth and their friends miming Bohemian Rhapsody in the Mirthmobile, the AMC Pacer. And I've just always loved Wayne's World. I think I prefer the Wayne's World movies to the Bill and Ted movies, which I suppose it could be argued are similar. There was a sharp intake of breath there.
Yeah, my one note about this was that I'm more of a Bill and Ted sort of person.
Oh, well, so. I mean, it's okay for us to balance these things out.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just all of the, the pop culture references. You've got Alice Cooper performing. They're after that Fender Strat in the shop. And then there's obviously so many cultural touchstones and things that I like included in this movie, which is why I love it so much. Wayne's World 2 is which was released a year later. I'm probably not going to talk about that in the movies of 1993, but that had a more sort of laboured conception. I read that Mike Myers pretty much ripped the script off of an old British comedy film called Passport to Pimlico, and they only realised this about 2 weeks before it was due to start filming, and they couldn't clear it, so he had to write the whole film in a couple of weeks. But again, Aerosmith are in it, and that's good as well. So I do like Wayne's World 2 as well, but I probably won't get to talk about it in the films of '93. So yeah, I had to go for Wayne's World. Always loved it. Always will.
Yeah, big classic. Like I say, I am definitely more of a Bill and Ted sort of guy, but take nothing away from Wayne's World. It is a classic without a doubt. And yeah, talking of the Bohemian Rhapsody scene, I was reading that the producers didn't want to have that song because I think it was going to cost too much to clear or something. Right. Mike Myers was threatening to leave the whole production if they didn't use it. So he sort of forced it through, didn't he?
Oh, right, okay.
Because he was so desperate for that song to be in there. But yeah, it's cool as well that it came from the Saturday Night Live sketch. I think that's kind of, they did well to make it into what it was. You know, the idea of making a film based on the sketch has gone badly wrong with other things. I know, is it Coneheads? I think that's an SNL sketch originally. It's famously a bit of a dud. So yeah, it's definitely gone down in history. So they did well. Good choice.
Yeah, maybe Bill and Ted's do a rewatch for me. I'll have to see. Did you watch the recent one? They brought it back again recently, didn't they?
Yeah, I quite liked it. Have you seen it?
Okay, I haven't. No. So I'll need to watch all three. Okay, right.
Yeah, considering how high risk that was to come back that late, I think Bill and Ted did nail it quite successfully with their third one. But yeah, not as good as the first two, of course.
Well, of course. Okay, then what's your final choice?
My final choice has a little bit of gravitas about it. It's a serious one, or even more serious than the first two, and it's Malcolm X. So this is a historical biopic about the civil rights leader, directed and written or co-written by Spike Lee, starring Denzel Washington in the lead role. And this is basically just a great example of a biopic about someone who deserves a great biopic. It's a long film, but it's one of those long films where you don't notice how long it is because it's just so rich and well made. It's based on Alex Haley's book, The Autobiography of Malcolm X. I hadn't realised this because I know that Alex Haley also wrote Roots, which is like an iconic 70s, I think, TV series.
Correct.
He also wrote this book. And it's a great film version of that autobiography. Spike Lee's a very cool, iconic director, always does good stuff. Denzel Washington has obviously, since this film, gone on to become Hollywood royalty, I would say. I think that's fair. And it's a great film, and I just think it's an important film to watch as well. And I like historical biopics because when they're done well, they're entertaining as well as, you know, teaching you something. That sounds so corny to say that, but I think I do really appreciate them. I've just recently watched Elvis, for example, another good one that came out last year. But yeah, it's a good film, and there's some sort of interesting things about the way it was produced as well that I was reading up about. So it was they didn't have enough money to put it together really. It went over budget basically, and so a number of prominent black celebrities basically put forward their own money to help get it over the line. So Bill Cosby, Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Janet Jackson, Prince, Tracy Chapman all gave their own money to get this film made, which I think is cool. Yeah, I thought it was worthy of a mention for being such a great biopic about such a interesting and important and great person. So that's why I have chosen it for my third choice.
Oh, absolutely interesting to hear about that early sort of crowdfunding model that was used to finish the film. But no, absolutely very, very worthy choice.
Do you have any wild cards or anything else you want to throw in there?
I do. First of all, a very, very brief honourable mention to Home Alone 2 Lost in New York, released on November the 20th, 92, directed by Chris Columbus. I had to mention it, obviously, in the pantheon of great Christmas movies again, alongside The Muppet Christmas Carol. Great to have them both released in the same year. But my wild card is a movie that was released on January the 17th, 1992, directed by Jeff Murphy. And this is called Free Jack. And I'm just going to read you the synopsis here and tell me at the end of this if you would want to go and watch this, if it was playing in the cinema across the road from your house. All right?
Yeah.
Early in the 21st century, technological advances have made it possible for aging wealthy people to pay crooks like Vasendak, played by Mick Jagger, to go back in time, kidnap young victims like race car driver Alex Furlong, played by Emilio Estevez, and deliver them to the elderly clients who then have their brains transplanted into their healthy bodies. Furlong manages to break free from his captors, but as a fugitive, he finds that the world of the future is a bleak, dangerous place.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it's out there. It sounds good, yeah. Well, it sounds intriguing.
It is terrible. So I was only really interested in this movie because I have a fixation on the acting career of Mick Jagger. So I've got a couple of his movies on DVD, possibly the best known one, Performance, which he made when he was really at the height of his early 1970s Rolling Stones fame. I've not seen, bizarrely, that's the best one, but there's Ned Kelly, in which he plays the title role, which I've seen, and then also Free Jack, which is one of his last sort of movie appearances. It doesn't mention this in the synopsis, but Anthony Hopkins is in this film. He plays one of the aging wealthy people who wants the young body for their brain to go into. And the wife of the pod, Beth, actually commented when we watched this together that it's bizarre to think that this film was released in the same year that Anthony Hopkins won the Best Actor Oscar for Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, that is weird.
And he's since been on record as calling the film terrible. So there you go. That's obviously what he thinks of it. And it's a typical representation, really, of what we thought the 21st century would look like in 1992. Obviously, that's all changed now. But I had to give Free Jack a mention. It's not the greatest movie out there. I'd go as far to say it's very much at the other end of the spectrum. But I remember from when I watched it a couple of years ago, it does move along. It doesn't hang about, and for just a bit of mindless fun, it's okay. So if you can sort of enjoy it despite its quality. But yeah, there you go. Free Jack, and anything with Mick Jagger playing a Russian criminal has to be worth a watch, I think.
Right. My wildcard, just a very short thing here, really, is a film called Into the West, and this is an example of a film that is sort of lives forever in my nostalgic memories and has never come out of that phase because I've not seen it since I went to the cinema to see this. I distinctly remember going to the Little Theatre in Bath to see this with my family, which would have been in 1992, so I would have been 7, and I've not seen it since. And I remember really liking it, and it sort of stirring emotions in me when I watched it. But that's it. I've not seen it since, and it's locked in that time in my mind. I have thought about watching it a few times recently, and I'm sort of in two minds as to whether I should or shouldn't. It's a film about the travelling community, stars Gabriel Byrne, set in Ireland. But that's all I can remember about it, and the horse. I think these two boys, I guess there was some connection there between the two boys being a similar age to me and my brother at the time that we saw it, riding around on this horse. But that jumped out when I looked down the list of films from this year, because it is that sort of childhood memory locked away. So yeah, I would love to know if anyone listening has seen this film or seen it recently or has any memories of it. But maybe one day I'll watch it again. But I couldn't choose it as one of my 3 because it was too distant a memory. But it's I just had to mention it for that. We have had a little bit of correspondence on the topic of the best films of 92, haven't we, Stu?
Yeah, and first of all, it's a big hello to new correspondent and my old media studies teacher, and now five-a-side buddy, Andy Sales. He's a big film man, I know. He gets in touch to say that his movies of 1992 are Universal Soldier, Under Siege, and The Mighty Ducks, with a shout out to the mental mob stroke vampire movie Innocent Blood. So many thanks for getting in touch with those, Andy. You are more than welcome along with us. Haven't mentioned The Mighty Ducks, have we? That was a big thing.
Yeah, that's. Am I right in thinking that was the first time it's the only time that I can think of where a film spawned an actual sports team? Because the Anaheim Mighty Ducks were started by Disney, I think. Is that right?
Yeah. I think this is probably the first instance of that happening. I can't think of any others.
It's so American, isn't it? So American, that whole way of starting a sports team. Yeah, but it's a good film. I need to watch it again. It's got Joshua Jackson, aka Pacey from Dawson's Creek, in a young role. So,
well, there you are.
What's worth it for that?
It's made for you.
Yeah. On our Instagram, Retro Slam got in touch to say Wayne's World, no stairway denied. Is that a quote from Wayne's World?
It is, yeah.
And also, Channel Nem, friend of the pod, said just from the pic, which is relating to the picture that I posted on Instagram. And before looking at the full list on Wikipedia, the movie that stands out for me is Wayne's World. So there is another shout out for Wayne's World.
Oh, thanks, guys. It's always nice when our choices as hosts get validated in this manner.
Yes.
It's really good. Legend of the Pod, Tim Parker says, where do I begin? In no particular order. Reservoir Dogs, The Bodyguard, A Few Good Men, Batman Returns, The Mighty Ducks, Patriot Games, Muppet Christmas Carol. And then he says, I'll be back with the rankings. He hasn't provided the rankings yet.
No.
But that is a big list. Reservoir Dogs, I'm surprised that wasn't in the top 10. We haven't mentioned
we've got no
that
mention
yet.
of that.
No, absolutely. But obviously a brilliant film.
Yeah.
Patriot Games I have seen very recently because I had a month's free subscription to Paramount Plus and it happened to be there. So we gave it a look. Harrison Ford as
is it Jack Ryan?
He's not the president. He's something to. Hang on a minute.
It obviously left a big indelible mark on you.
Yeah. I know Sean Bean was in it with a very, very dodgy Irish accent. But that much I remember.
Just make him Yorkshire. Don't try and make him something else.
Exactly. Don't try and make him something he isn't.
Which is the whole point of acting. But there you go. This is Sean Bean we're talking about.
Thanks for that, Tim. Do let us know your final rankings, and we'll get back to that.
Yeah. Ruth Collinson also said on Facebook, I think my top 5 from that year, although it's hard to choose, would be in no particular order: Candyman, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, Home Alone 2, Strictly Ballroom, and Aladdin. She says, maybe it's worth noting that because of the excessive marketing campaign the film had, it felt like A Few Good Men was the biggest film of all time, with You Can't Handle the Truth clips being shoved down our throats in every ad break of every program. That's true. I've never seen A Few Good Men, and I know it's one of the big films that I've missed out from my film watching over the years, and I really do need to see that. But a great example of a quote from a film that is it's just one of the most famous film quotes of all time, isn't it? Definitely of the 90s. And she also says that there were some huge hit songs that were featured in films from that year, and sometimes they ended up being bigger than the films themselves. So from Far and Away, there was Book of Days by Enya. That's a second sort of Clanad mention of the pod. And A League of Their Own with This Used to Be My Playground by Madonna. I don't think I actually know that song. I bet Joe Barter loves that song, but I don't.
Well, so that has been in the charts recently, or it was on the Top of the Pops run through that's going on BBC 4. So presumably that was in the chart because it was used in that movie, which obviously makes perfect sense. But yes, no, Joe will. I'm sure Joe will defend This Used to Be My Playground to the absolute death.
That's all the correspondence we've got on this so far, but just because we haven't read them out on this one, you can still send them in and we will read them out in the next podcast. We always want to hear from you about anything we've talked about in the past. So whether that's films of 1992 or 91 or the films of 1990 or any of the other topics, please do get in contact because we love reading it out and debating with you what your thoughts are on these topics. So please, do get in touch. And you know what, I might as well read out the contact details while I'm here.
Go for it.
You can find us on our link tree, has links to all the different social medias we're on. And the link to that is linktr.ee/allright90s podcast. That's all one word, allright90s podcast. Or you can just go to Linktree and search for All Right 90s podcast and you'll find us. And they're the best way to get in touch with us. I would probably advise against you sending comments under the YouTube video because obviously we don't see them for a year. But we will endeavour to check that a little bit more closely in future, if nothing else for you, George Alty, because we are very sorry about missing your correspondence from back in the day. Well, that wraps up our Films of 1992 episode. Stu, I don't think we know for sure what we're doing next, do we?
No. It's a new year, and we haven't decided. We're still getting back into the swing of things. We haven't quite decided yet, but rest assured, we will be back in 2 weeks' time with something else to discuss. So leave it with us, and we'll be back. Don't worry about it.
Absolutely. Well, you can always rely on us. We've had our holiday now, so we'll be here every 2 weeks for the next year and a half or whatever it was, however long our series are. But until our next episode. Thank you for listening again, and like I said, please do get in touch with anything you've heard, and we'll see you next time. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. I'm just off to do some aerobics to my Beverley Bollard VHS.